Okay, we're going to be talking about the election of 1860, and one of the things you really need to notice right up front is how divisive this election was. It really split the country up badly. I mean, if you just look at the four candidates, that's right, four candidates, you'll even notice that there are two Democratic candidates, one from the north, one from the south. The Democratic ticket in particular was split because we had Stephen Douglas, who was the Northern Democrat, you can see right here. He was the front runner in the Democratic for the Democratic nomination, but he was still for popular sovereignty, and that was his downfall among Southern Democrats. Popular sovereignty, remember, being the idea that people living out here in these territories have the right to decide for themselves if they are going to be a slave or free territory or state. Now, that's how Douglas felt about it, but Southern Democrats in particular didn't really see it that way. A lot of them wanted instead to have slavery based on more of the Dred Scott system, which, if you've already watched that particular portion, you'll know is saying essentially that even if a slave is brought from a slave area into a free area, that doesn't make him free, which pretty much throws away any concept of popular sovereignty or any concept of having free states, because if you can just buy slaves somewhere else and then bring them into a free state and they're not considered freed at that point, then what's the point of even calling them free states? You can have slaves there. So Southern Democrats wanted this Dred Scott version of slavery policy instead. So they nominated their own guy, this guy John C. Breckinridge, who was the current vice president, and had that in his platform, that slavery should follow something closer to what was outlined in the Dred Scott decision by the Supreme Court. Republicans, on the other hand, nominated Lincoln, and you can see right here that Lincoln ended up winning most of the North, as well as Oregon and California. Lincoln's platform regarding slavery was that he wasn't trying to end slavery overall, meaning he wasn't trying to take it away from the states that already had it: Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, as well as Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Missouri. He wasn't looking to take it away from those states, but he was very firm in saying the territories cannot include slavery. It should not be out there. It should stay where it is currently and not expand. And the people in his base, in the Republican base, remember, are mostly free soilers and abolitionists from the North, and they were not going to let him back off on that particular part of his platform. So he was really stuck with that. So that was his side of it. Then we had a fourth candidate, this guy Bell, John Bell of Tennessee, who was for the Constitutional Union Party, and his basic platform was just keeping the Union together. He could see the amount of divisiveness in the country between the North and the South, between the blue and the green on this particular map, and he saw that it was really necessary to be in the election just to say, we're losing it here, we're falling apart. And his big thing was trying to keep the country together. Obviously, that didn't work. Lincoln ends up winning, as you can see by this map. You can see that in the electoral vote, he wins with 59%, 180 votes, which is a clear majority. But in the popular vote, there's a bit of an issue. Lincoln only wins a plurality of the votes, meaning not a majority. He doesn't win 50% plus one. He wins 40%, which is more than anybody else, but it's not a majority of what the country wanted. And in fact, in this election, this is the first and only time that the opponents of the winner disagree with the results and don't concede. The other three candidates said, rightly so, that together more Americans wanted one of them, and more Americans wanted somebody other than Lincoln. So that was an issue there. And although there was an attempt to compromise and figure out a way of Lincoln appeasing people in the South by maybe reneging on his platform of not allowing slavery to expand to the West. Lincoln didn't go along with that. Other people tried to offer that to him, and he said no. He's not going to come back from that plan. He's not going to allow slavery in the Western Territories, period, full stop. So you can see where everybody won. We have Douglas winning only the state of Missouri, Bell winning just these 3 states in here, Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. These are the border states. And then you have Lincoln winning all the states in the North, with the exception of Douglas winning a little bit of New Jersey down here, and Maryland, Delaware going to Breckinridge, and then Breckinridge winning all the states in the South. So you could see very clearly the division between North and South at this point, and this is the result. We've got secession, and it starts happening as early as December 20th of 1860, so just a month after the election. Before Lincoln even takes office, we have many of the southern states seceding. Starting in December 20th in South Carolina, the South Carolina legislature passes an ordinance of secession, and then following their lead, secessionists first in Mississippi, then Florida, then Alabama, then Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas all secede or all pass legislation seceding from the Union. And all of those states then send delegates to Montgomery, Alabama, which was the new capital of this Confederate States of America, and they basically started a government, and they made a guy named Jefferson Davis their president. At this point, those southern states were operating on their own without the input from the Union of the North, Washington, D.C. Interestingly, as many as 40% of Southerners did not actually want to secede when they did. At the time that these states were seceding, not the majority, but a high number of people in each of those states thought maybe, okay, secession might be in the cards in the future, but this isn't the right time. And so you want to make sure that you're very careful that even though the states seceded, and we kind of see North v. South here, there were still a lot of people in the South that weren't really sure how they felt about leaving the United States. They weren't necessarily for that. So just want to make sure that you're very aware of this. In Kentucky and Missouri, which were both slave states, they tried to secede, but they ultimately failed and stayed under Union control, as well as in Delaware, Maryland, and then later Virginia and West Virginia split, and West Virginia went to the north. You can see all the green states stayed loyal to the Union. And the red states here, Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas, they all seceded after the Fort Sumter incident, which is what we're about to talk about next. So in the next video, you will see Fort Sumter and really the outbreak of formal war, the first shots of the Civil War. But that's the election of 1860 and its immediate effect, which was really the division of the country between the southern states here and the northern states up here. Okay?